Today is August 3rd, 2022, exactly 1:44 in the afternoon. And this afternoon, we will be having discussions with the Commonwealth Utilities Corporation, Mr. Garrett Camacho, the director, along with his staff from HR, I believe, and also the finance department and other personnel that he brought along with him this afternoon. And so, for the viewing public, you will be on, is it Facebook? Facebook Live, so that you can also participate in this meeting this afternoon with the Utilities Corporation Director and his staff. And therefore, I'd like to call this meeting to order. Before we move into the adoption of the agenda, pursuant to our SNIO Rule 7, Section 5C, we only need 3 members to be present to have a quorum, and we do have quorum this afternoon. Myself, Representative Vicente Camacho is here, Representative Tina Sablan is here. Excused for this meeting is Representative Denita Yangtamay, Representative Corina Magofnia, and excused is Representative JP Sablan, Representative Joseph Lipon Guerrero, and Representative BJ Attu will be joining us shortly. May I hear a motion for the adoption of the agenda? It has been moved and seconded. This agenda for this afternoon is adopted. Moving right along, on item number 4, under public comments. If there's anybody out there that would like to make a comment, you may please proceed to the microphone, the podium. You have about 5 minutes, and please state your name and provide a copy to the LB staff if you have a written comment. I guess there's no public comment, so I'm closing that section of the agenda this afternoon. I also do want to recognize our LB staff that is joining us this afternoon for this meeting. We have Legal Counsel Antoinette Villagomez, LA Assistant Devin Macaranas, SNIO Clerk Assistant Thomas Benavente, Sergeant at Arms Wilbrandon Uggan, and our IT personnel, Jonathan Diaz and Delbert Camacho. Thank you so much for helping us out this afternoon. Let's proceed on item number 5. If I may call up the director and his staff to please come and join us. And it is standard procedure in this committee that I chair that we administer the oath to every sitting appearance of department heads. And so if you would kindly just stand up and raise your right hand, and the council would administer, or the assistant would administer the oath. There's no objection by the members? Thank you.
You do solemnly swear under the penalty of perjury that the testimony you shall give in the matter at hand shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. Thank you.
Thank you. You may take your seats. And for the director of CUC, Mr. Gary Camacho, the floor is open for you to deliver a brief statement to the committee before we move into the general discussion with the committee members this afternoon and some questions. Go ahead, please. Thank you.
My apologies,
Our
Chairwoman.
apologies. Thank you.
Yes, thank you for the opportunity to allow myself and my staff of the Commonwealth Utilities Corporation to be here and be able to answer any questions that you and the committee may have. We obviously do the best we can in the circumstances provided to us. And recently, there's obviously been some serious issues in ways of the FAC rate, fuel adjustment clause. And we're hopeful to again continue to make that understanding to the committee as we have with the legislature under the PUTC. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Camacho. We're going to move right into our agenda on item number 6 for discussion. Members, the floor is open for any of you to proceed with your questions so that we can begin the conversation with CUC this afternoon. Recognize Representative Vicente Camacho.
Good afternoon, Director and your crew. Just a really quick event that I had gone through. Last month, I was at CUC to pay for my bill, and I also accompanied a couple people out there. And all these folks wanted me to do was convince CUC customer service if they can either delay or get an extension to pay their phone bills or electric bill. One of them was just asking for a delay of payment until payday so that they can actually pay for it and not get cut off. The question is, why are there so many of them? There's so many of them out there. I was actually shocked to see so many of them out there in line for the same reason. So what I'm thinking is, isn't this really a time to call for a state of emergency with all this happening, that people are out there angry, complaining about why so much, why so suddenly? So I just kind of want to hear what you have to say about that. Thank you. I yield for now.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for that question and that concern. We also at CUC have the same concerns as increases, as I've mentioned in the PUTC, as the rate increases, particularly in this case on the FAC side, it is a pass-through from the fuel contract. We do understand the situation as far as a declaration or an emergency. I have no authority in making that claim or stating that or even declaring that. However, what I'd like to say is that we do have an opportunity, or we do have and provide the opportunity for people to come in and explain their situation, and case to case, and we can try to consider that and work with the customer on how we can ensure that a payment program is prepared to accommodate their circumstances and also accommodate the requirements of CUC to ensure that we at some point retrieve the funding so then we can continue to make payment for the fuel and of course be able to sustain our operation.
Thank you for that, Director. I yield.
Thank you, Director. Recognize Representative Tina Sablan.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and welcome, Director, and welcome to your staff at CUC. So I think my initial questions to begin really have to do with the fuel charge. And I was wondering if you could just break down for us in layman's terms what the FAC actually covers. And I know you said that there is a formula, but could you break it down in layman's terms so that the ordinary ratepayer can understand?
Absolutely. And my apologies, Chairwoman and committee members. I forgot to introduce my staff. Here we have Betty Terlahi, who is the Chief of Administration. Betty's got a lot of history for a lot of this because of her overseeing the billing department for a long period of time. So I brought her for any historical information. And then to my left, I have Mr. Greg Cruz, who is our CFO. And to his left, we have Rodolfo Urbano, who is the chief accountant. And thank you for the question. Very good question. And I'd like to hand it over to the CFO to make clear of that.
Thank you, Mr. Camacho. The well, to start with, the fact rate is or comprises of essentially four components. The first component will be the MOPS rate, which is the price that is reflective of the average trading price FOB of Singapore oil, which is where our supplier fuel purchases the fuel, and that is the first component.
And I'm sorry, you mentioned some acronyms there.
Well,
MOPS,
MOPS,
FOB.
I'm
Let's just,
sorry.
yeah.
Means of Platts.
Okay.
Singapore would be the acronym for. I mean, it's the acronym for MOPS, and then FOB would be free on board, which is typically the price of what you would pay that excludes any shipping costs. For example, shipping costs from Singapore to Saipan.
Okay.
You would only pay at that point of the shipping point just what it costs there, but exclusive of any shipping costs. So there's the MOPS. There's also, of course, the transportation costs. On top of that Mobile passes on to us. There are also some taxes, local taxes like the gross receipt tax. There's an oil spill tax, and I believe there's also a beautification tax. There's and there's also there's insurance, cargo insurance.
What kind of insurance?
Marine insurance.
Okay.
Marine insurance. Let's see. I believe predominantly those are the charges that. Pardon. Oh, on the back, and there's a bad debt element to the fact rate, which is
A what element?
it's bad debt.
Bad debt.
Bad debt.
Okay.
And there's also one more. There's also what is referred to in the fact rate as pardon? The volatility, which actually is, I don't recall what the percentage is, but those are the basically what makes up the fact charges that is passed on to our customers.
Mhm. The volatility rate. Could you explain that more?
Yeah, that would
Yeah.
account for because the price is set at the beginning of the month.
Mhm.
That volatility rate, my understanding would be to account for any price fluctuations during the month, because that MOPS, that rate is fixed at the beginning. For example, the rate that is being charged in the month of August,
Mhm.
that's fixed. It doesn't change. So there's a volatility element on that, which is, I believe, less than 1%.
So
You
it's
know-
like an additional charge to act as a cushion in case
Prices go
the
up
price goes up within
or
the
down.
month.
Yes.
But do you adjust for that the following month if the price goes down?
Yes.
Hmm.
Yes.
And what is the bad debt element?
That's to account for customers that don't pay their bills. So
Like the
that's
government.
customers. Yeah.
The
Well, it
government
could
is
be-
your largest delinquent customer.
It could be
right?
government customers, residential customers, commercial customers, and all that. So it's understood that not everybody's going to pay their bill on time,
Right.
but the cash that's going to have to be collected from those customers to pay our supplier. I mean, it has to be paid.
Hmm.
So unfortunately, the paying customers would have to make up for the non-paying customers, the way the fact methodology was
And the
designed.
And the FAC, please mention that the FAC represents 2012.
Yeah, and the director asked me to mention that when the fact rate was first developed, this was back in 2014, and it was based on data back in 2014, which is not reflective of what it is today. But because we don't have the authorization to true up the rate to what it is today, to true up that formula to what it is today,
Hmm.
then there are, I mean, for example, I mean, if there are costs that we are not able to pass along, or true costs that we're not going to be able to pass along to our customers, for example, our efficiencies. If The efficiency rate back in 2014 was $14 or 14 kWh per gallon of oil or diesel that we use, and today it's down to 12.
Mhm.
I mean, that difference there, the company, the CUC would have to absorb themselves as opposed to passing along to the customers.
Right.
So that's I'm trying to explain that, that formula that was established back in 2014 is not reflective of what it is today. So
And that there would be additional charges that you'd want to include
yes,
within the
or the other
FAC.
way around, if we're efficient, a lot more efficient than when it was back in 2014, then we can pass that savings on to the customers if we were
Yeah.
allowed to make that change to the formula. But currently, under the authorization we have, the only adjustment we can make to the FAC rate would be the MOPS rate.
I see. And the formula that was adopted and approved by the PUC, right, back in 2014, that included that formula, the MOPS rate, the transportation costs, the taxes, insurance, bad debt elements, and volatility. That was all in the formula that the PUC approved? Or is it just the MOPS rate?
It's the MOPS rate plus the volatility element plus the bad debt
Mhm.
component and I believe that, yeah.
So everything else, the transportation costs, the taxes, those are just added on.
Those are costs absorbed by the CUC because it's not included in the FAC rate.
Oh, it's not included.
Yeah. Yes.
And if I may jump in here, Congresswoman, it's,
Okay.
for example, wharfage at the
Mhm.
port, that's something that obviously has to be paid. The beautification tax, the
Mhm.
gross receipt tax, oil spill tax, those are all taxes that are imposed, that are also inclusive to inevitably the rate.
Yeah, I guess what I'd like to see is a breakdown for any given month, but maybe especially in this last month when CUC hiked up the FAC pretty significantly, right? It was a massive shock for a lot of people to get their bills. But to actually see how that breaks down, like what is actually included in that FAC, right? And I mean, it's helpful to know what costs are absorbed by CUC and not actually included in the FAC. But I think what people really would like to understand, what I would like to understand is how the FAC actually breaks down in any given month, and maybe especially in this last month. Would that be possible? Could you provide that to us?
Well, not the numbers. I mean,
But the FAC itself.
well, the FAC itself is in totality, but not the cost.
The methodology of the FAC.
The methodology, okay, but the numbers is what we're told is confidential.
Not just the rate itself.
Yeah, so how do for me to, I
Just
can,
the pennies of what's the total FAC. And that's okay.
Yeah, there's a component on the FAC that obviously is provided by mobile,
Mhm.
correct? And with that, that's an element to the rest of the formula to inevitably have an FAC rate, a CUC FAC rate.
Mhm.
The MOPS rate, from the MOPS rate forward, yes, we can provide that. The manner in which the formula works.
Right. Well, I would like to see all of that, and I understand that the chairwoman also requested the price notifications that mobile issues, and I do also recognize that they have asked that information not be disclosed, but I don't understand why that couldn't be disclosed to the legislature, at least in executive session. If it is in fact proprietary or confidential, is that something that you could share with us?
Well, I made an effort, as
Yeah.
you know, and to the request of Chairwoman, I made a request for the information
Mhm.
to the contractor, and the response I received is, I provided a copy,
Right.
which is proprietary. I did speak with the Attorney General's office on the matter, and the Attorney General's office says yes, they do have the right under the OGA for that, to protect that information.
Right.
So I would love to provide it if I could, but both legally and contractually, I guess, under the under the proprietorship, that's the response I have.
And I think I would like to get our legal counsel's opinion on that as well. 'Cause this wouldn't be pursuant to an Open Government Act request. It would be pursuant to a request of the legislature. And we do have rules that allow for executive session to receive information that is confidential
Sure.
and not subject to OGA disclosure. Right?
Absolutely. And again, if I can make clear, Chairwoman, CUC is in no way a part of holding any information, this particular information. We've requested the information. We made clear that we want the information. But that's the answer I got and I received from Mobile, and I forwarded that issue or that
Right.
response to
Right,
the
but
committee.
from our perspective, it's CUC that sets the FAC, right? Not Mobile. And so I think that is the legitimate request that the chair has made, and I would think, perhaps our legal counsel could chime in here. I would think that is information that we should be
Sure.
allowed to see,
Sure.
at least in executive session, if there is a legitimate proprietary interest
Sure.
on Mobile's
Now,
part.
again,
Because Mobile is also a bit of a monopoly themselves, right? And so I think that there is a legitimate public interest and legislative interest in seeing that.
sure.
information.
And if I may, thank you for that, Congresswoman. If I may, Chairwoman, we as far as the formula itself, we do have that, and we'd be more than happy to, we do and have provided that formula itself. The only area of the formula that seemed to that's represented by the proprietorship for Mobile is just the MOPS and how they had concluded on the MOPS rate, and that one rate is a portion of is a component in the whole equation. So everything else you can provide, it's just that information from Mobile, which I requested for and did receive a response, which I provided to the committee. And we'll continue to ask Congresswoman Saipan.
I'd like to recommend that the chair, perhaps we can work the procedures out with our legal counsel, but if that's something that should be subject to a legislative subpoena or another request that we would then be able to review in an executive session, I'd like to make that suggestion now. I do have other questions, Madam Chair, but I can yield at this time.
Thank you for that, Rep. Tina. Our counsel this afternoon actually has a copy of the letter from Mobile, including my request, so that we will be having conversation with her. We will be responding legally to try to address the issue regarding the request that we have made. I do understand on Mobile's letter, just to kind of like stay on the subject matter, that they have obtained a paid subscription-based platform, which is the MOPS, obviously, just like paying a subscription to get into the S&P 500 index and any other index out there for the stock market. I understand that clearly. I do understand the copyright and intellectual laws related to the platform, so that's clear to me as well. But I think with respect to the FAQ itself on my email requesting for that formula that was approved by the CPUC at that point time period way back in time, I think that's still pending to be submitted to the committee. It was specified in my email, so if that can be provided maybe later on this afternoon or sometime this week, that would be much appreciated. Now, I do want to, and members, please go ahead and flag me if you need to ask any other questions. I do have a list of questions for CUC this afternoon that I would like to carry on with. Now, I want to stay on the subject matter on the conversation on the FAQ formula itself. I hear some discussions or statements made of the volatility, beginning of the month and ending of the month time period. We all understand that that's based on the MOPS. Bad debt component that is also, I believe, that was stated earlier, that was worked into the formula of the FAQ or the price of fuel for that matter when you get it from Mobile. Now, it seems to me like, generally speaking, that, for example, the bad debt component insertion on the rate itself, that is a hidden fee that is not stated on the power bill for the CUC paying ratepayers. You have the $7 that's clearly stated on the power bill, but For example, the whatever that rate is that is included on the bad debt component is not seen by the public. So in generally speaking, we can consider that as a hidden fee that the general public does not see. So I want to move into this conversation of, and any of you can answer to my question, whether you would agree with this statement that there should be nothing automatic about passing on fuel expenses or any other expense to utility ratepayers without commission oversight and regulation. Do you agree that the fact charges to customers on a monthly basis is fair, considering that there has not been a rate review by CPUC?
I would just like, of course, I think there should be some review always. CUC cannot review itself. But I do want to remind or mention, as I mentioned in the previous hearings, is that the methodology we're currently using is a methodology provided to us by the CPUC and required and mandating us to follow it accordingly. We have been doing that, not only the methodology, but also providing a copy of all the information to the commission office. And in addition to that, we also are required to place that through the media, which we do every month.
Mhm.
So I think we've done it followed accordingly to those requirements. Who's going to review them? Maybe that's for this body to determine, but we provide the information for review.
Thank you for that, and that would be the responsibility of CPUC, obviously. Again, when we talk about other hidden costs that are attached to whatever fee that CUC is paying for when the fuel purchase comes in from mobile, those are the very key particular items that the CPUC needs to be made aware, as we stated it this afternoon about, the bad debt component, the volatility rate, and things like that. I would urge CUC that when they start having a meeting with CPUC, when they submit their rate review, that all of these particular items are fully disclosed to CPUC so that the paying consumer is fully aware of why are they paying so much. And we welcome Representative BJ Atto. Furthermore, I want to again stay on the subject matter. Do you further agree that a fuel adjustment mechanism should never be the vehicle for passing on costs associated with non-fuel items or activities such as demand-side program costs, including lost revenues or purchase power demand charges, and that the normal regulatory process where a commission here in the CNMI, being CPUC, reviews all costs for appropriateness, is the vehicle for passing on costs other than fuel costs to ratepayers? Would you agree with that?
Chairwoman, I would agree with that to some extent, but we're required for full cost recovery. These are the things that are brought to the commission, reviewed by the commission, debated by the commission or their contractors, along with the CUC, and all of these rates were placed into the rate, and we followed it accordingly since the inception.
2014.
That's
correct?
correct. And if
Okay.
I may, Congresswoman, with all due respect, it is my understanding, and I have been informed that docket 1301 was provided. And it does show the methodology of the fuel adjustment authority. And it was provided to your office. And please confirm that, but that's what I'm being told.
Okay, we would check on that.
And it's docket 1301. And it's before, the heading is before the Commonwealth Public Utilities Commission.
Okay, thank you. We will look into that. I believe you probably have that document available on your website. Is that correct?
Yes, it is.
Okay, all right. Now, I want to tag on to Representative Camacho's earlier statement, and I want to bring you to your 2019 audit, where it states that CUC allows for issuance of promissory notes with terms ranging from 6 months to 10 years at an interest rate of 12% per annum. My question is this term fairly applied across the board to all CUC customers, or are you even still, allowing this particular promissory note process to go on to date as we speak? And additionally, with respect to customer service, is CUC considering maybe on placing payment kiosk in different locations on Saipan just to alleviate the traffic for payment when customers come to the Dandan office? We often get those kind of complaints.
Thank you for asking that, Chairwoman. I'm pleased to state that, yes, CUC has been in preparation for a kiosk program. We do have on island, I think, 6 already that we are working and fine tuning, and then we'll be putting one in the north of Saipan, one in, I think, on the east and in the west, in the west portion of Saipan, and one in the south, and then one on Tinian and one on Rhoda. That's the beginning of the program, and we will soon be expanding that a little further with more kiosks in other areas. We've just been working with particular vendors to see what we can do about placing them in locations where they're most available. For example, hopefully 24-hour locations is one, well lit areas is another, safety controls, cameras, a variety of different things to ensure the safety of our consumers who will then be utilizing those type of equipment. But we do have them, and we encourage you and others to come down, take a look at them, and maybe we can update you and inform you as to when we'll be putting those out and initiating. But we're very, very close, and the equipment is on island. Actually, we actually have one, I think, in the customer service area for people to start to practice or even inquire about. As far as your first question, I'm going to hand that over regarding the promissory notes and so forth to our Chief Administration, Betty Trelawney.
Hi, good afternoon. With regards to promissory notes, we do grant our customers, depending on the factors such as the amounts, the amount that's due, and or if it's large amounts, like we have installation charges, and some installation charges can go as high as, in 30, 40,000, depending on how far into their property we're building in. So, we do, the average is 5 years for installation. But when the amount is large and the amount doesn't become affordable for the customer, then we spread it out and grant, a little more than 5 years.
Okay,
I'm
so
not
so
aware
you
of a
do have
10.
that
Yes,
going
we
on
do.
right now. The reason why I want to bring that to your attention, because we all know the way the economy is going. The effects of COVID, the pandemic, is still, happening in most of the establishments here in the Commonwealth. And as you all know too, that SBA provided the PPP loan, the EIDO assistance, grant assistance to businesses that apply for that. And utilities is one of those qualifying expenses under the PPP program. Even with that, that passes through the banks here on Saipan, or even for Rhode and Tinian, still a lot of businesses are not generating the same revenue prior to the pandemic. And therefore, I would like to plead to you to be considerate, in looking at the cases for the businesses and also private residentials, to make that consideration so that people are able to fulfill their promise to pay without losing power or water to their homes. The reality is we do get a lot of those concerns. We get calls from the community, and it's much more painful when we know of a household that has children living in them. And I'm sure that as a system, we could have much more consideration. I understand you need to collect your revenues, but moving forward in all the other questions, I do also understand also that based on the audit report, there is a lot of liquidity that the organization itself holds. And I will be asking those questions as we move forward in this meeting this afternoon. Any other member that has any other questions before I proceed with more of my questions? Recognize Representative Vicente Camacho.
Thank you, Chair. I am aware that you, CUC, had a team that took a trip to Guam to visit GPA, Guam Power Authority. Can you tell us the purpose of that trip and how is this meeting with GPA is going to improve CUC's overall service?
Thank you for that question, Congressman Camacho. I've been working with John Beneventi for a couple of years now directly on our renewable program. It's taken a lot. GPA has been expanding their program, but they've also been very clear with me as to some of the challenges that they've had along the way. And some of the challenges and some of the issues have been very significant in way of equipment damages and so forth. Technology also has not been fully prepared for a utility grid size system. And so John and I have although we worked closely together on a number of things and many discussions with the intent, of course, to expand and initiate the utility grid solar program for the CNMI. But again, like anything else, we want to make sure that it's non-disruptive, as he's had some issues along the way, and he's been very professional in the way that he's made clear multiple times that he wants to make sure that some of the experiences that he and they have had, he wants to make sure that that becomes a value to the CUC to ensure that we don't have those types of issues. And of course, the technology, as I mentioned earlier, has developed, particularly in the battery side, which is critical for a utility grid size system, photovoltaic system. The batteries have developed to the point now where we've got voltage control, and we also have load shifting capabilities. And in saying that now it really opens the door for CUC to come in because of those benefits to the system, and again, not impact the rest of the grid. Now, what we're looking at is a 20 megawatt system. 20 megawatt anywhere else wouldn't be that big, but 20 megawatts of a 35 megawatt demand system is huge. That's near 65% on one system. So with that would then feed the batteries, and then or that would be charged in the afternoon, feed the batteries, and then those batteries then would be discharged in the evening in a way where we can do 6 megawatts on 2 batteries at a time, or we can do 10 megawatts on each battery at a time and drain them and not turn on an engine and save fuel. Or we can then go 5 megawatts per system and go 12 hours. So there's a variety of different ways now we can integrate the renewable program and the energy into the system, which then could benefit, of course, the utilities in ways of savings on maintenance, on wear and tear on the equipment, lube oil consumption, and also fuel oil consumption. And all of this, again, would be savings that would be forwarded to the consumer. So that is something we're working on. I want to make clear, though, that CUC did and has, as far back as 2011, did go into a renewable program or attempt to go into a renewable program. However, that contract was never signed because there were issues at the very end that the contractor was not agreeable to. And if I remember correctly, I forget the size of that, but we did make an effort then. We then in 2015 did the IRP, the Integrated Resource Plan. That included a variety of different technologies to be submitted for a new power plant. 4 of those, if I remember correctly, 4 or 5 of those were contractors that were renewable photovoltaic. However, all of them were submitted could not secure land. Land has been an issue. The 20 megawatt solar farm that I'm trying to put together, that we're trying to complete, will require 33 hectares of land. And of course, on a 12.5 by 6, it's more challenging than a large area. It's a very difficult and different challenge than even Guam, because of the land mass availability. So there's a lot of these things, but we're working closely with the governor's office and DPL in securing those properties, and it is my understanding that that should be something that should be something a hurdle that can be overcome. On top of that, as we mentioned earlier, taxes. When we do bid this out, and contractors are awarded, again, taxes would probably be required at these facilities. But then again, those are taxes that are, again, will be passed to the consumer. So again, this is something that I will bring inevitably to the legislature, that potentially would be an option to reduce the impact to the consumer is eliminate any taxes for that particular contractor in producing that particular product for our program. Again, I did bring in, this was the very first time that we incorporated more engineers and a greater staff of people into the mix, because we've basically completed our understanding of what the concept we want. So in this last trip, I did bring people there. We did interact with some of their engineering staff, their IT staff, because of a solar program this large would have to be operated and controlled through software. So we did bring IT and we did bring finance. The CFO was present there because of the funding requirements. So it was not only technical, but it was financial, and of course with the IT staff involved too. We were able to see what it is they do and the system that they have, but we were also able to hear all the challenges that they have had over the years and how they've resolved those challenges and what we need to ensure we implement into our program. This will now, the next step will be continued conversation on further requirements on the technical side. They will then, their engineering team that I've requested for, will then travel to Saipan to continue review of some of the areas to help finalize that scope of work. Inclusive to that would be some of their procurement people and also their attorney to work with our team and our attorney to ensure that we have a viable package that we can put in and have the most benefit to the CNMI and to of course the CNMI consumers and the government. So all of this is the reason and the purpose that I was in Guam, sir.
Thank you. One more quick question.
Go ahead.
Has CUC ever discussed or even suggested to look into privatizing CUC or just the electric company itself? Has that ever been a discussion?
Yes, it has been a discussion over the years, and there have been some good topics raised regarding the matter. Some people would prefer that the base load power plant be under the government, under the Commonwealth Utility, remain under the Commonwealth Utilities Corporation. I do understand that privatization, depending on what you're referring to, is it privatization of the operations, is it privatization of the facility, or is it privatization wholeheartedly and in its entirety? So we have to understand what that concept would be. Again, we have to be very clear that any privatization would probably not tolerate any disconnections or delinquencies, because it would then be a true private relationship. Currently, I respectfully say that we do have a $40 million AR with in fact more than that's just one customer. We have to understand that although we do try our best to be able to collect that, we do understand the challenges by that and those companies or those agencies in being able to afford that. However, those are some of the things that have to be considered. And in addition to that, any contract issues that may have, do understand that the viability and the control of the power system, which basically controls the economy, and the government, public health, public education, everything is controlled, and the way of life of all consumers in the CNMI is going to be based out of that base load, and anything that is out of the island of Saipan primarily subsidizes the other islands. So we have to be very clear in understanding what it is we're going to do. I do believe in CUC owning, although I believe in all concepts depending on the contract itself. But I do believe that CUC should and should consider, and the government should consider remaining with CUC. However, as far as ownership, however, maybe the operations at the highest level should be privatized to ensure that we bring in our local labor force in the mix. So although all of that can be debatable in every way, shape, and form, but CUC has considered it, CUC has discussed it, and it never closed the door on any option that is most beneficial to the CNMI.
Thank you for that. I think that we should bring that in one of these days at a different discussion level. Thank you, Chair. Now
Thank you, Representative Camacho. And that, on that particular subject matter, it was Public Law 16-17 that provides CUC to wholly or partially turn over to the private sector any of the service divisions. And just so that we kind of like want to bring that up in this conversation now. You mentioned the word subsidizing. That caught my attention. Now, let me ask this very specific question. Is the revenue being generated from this third municipality subsidizing the other two municipalities' expenses for the production of power or for any type of services that CUC is providing?
Well, I'm in a fraction of it. I mean, it's economies of scale. It has nothing to do with what someone wants to pay or not. It's the one rate across the islands discussion, and I believe rightfully so. It's challenged shipping, but from here, anything you move on water is extremely expensive. It's a hazard product. Anything you move, so see the added, our product, the Saipan's product ends here, cost ends here. Moving to moving it to Tinian and any further is going to be an added cost, and because of the economies of scales, I believe that it's although this is a legislative matter, I believe that it's something that is something that we're doing and has to be, considering the challenges of living in other areas in the CNMI.
Thank you for that. And I think that's on a different level of conversation. It takes us into encouraging economic development also in the other municipalities so that they can increase their revenue generation as well.
I agree 100%.
Right. Thank you. Recognize Representative Tina Sablan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And on the subject of subsidy, so going back to the FAC, does the bad debt element in the FAC essentially mean that paying customers are subsidizing the non-paying customers?
Yes.
Okay.
And I want to, if I can just elaborate on that.
Mhm.
For example, the folks or the bills that have not been paid. Again, we go back to what we originally just started with, which is the fuel contract. If we continue to allow that to happen, which obviously we need to, based on some of the functions of these entities and the importance to our community. However, the reality is that the FAC portion has to be paid.
Mhm.
And if that has to be paid, I mean, because it could affect every other customer, then somewhere we have to pay that.
Right. Okay. And
To add clarification, it's a very small component in the rate, and it's just a percentage of the financial statements bad debt allowance
mhm.
from 2012. It's the cost of business. There's fuel that has been unpaid in accounts that we've written off the books
Mhm.
from way back, and so those fuel that are in these delinquent accounts that aren't part of the bad debt in our financial statements, a percentage of that portion, which is the fuel portion,
Yeah.
is put back into the fuel rate to allow us to be truly full cost recovered.
And I think that's why that breakdown that I asked for would be really helpful, is to see that, like, how does the FAC actually break down in terms of like how much is attributed to the bad debt element, how much to volatility, how much to MOPS, right? I think if you could even just give us a sample for the month of June, that could be really informative and helpful for us to better understand how this breaks down.
And yes, we will have that for you. That's one thing we definitely want to do, is ensure that everybody's understanding of the methodology.
Thank you. And I do recognize that CUC is kind of in a bind. Even if you wanted to submit a new rate structure, there is nobody to submit it to who can review it and approve it because the CPUC is basically defunct, right? But I am curious, is the FAC itself subject to an independent audit?
That would be the commission to answer, right?
But if you can elaborate a little bit more when you say it's the FHC, are you referring to the methodology?
The methodology, I mean,
No.
the collections
No.
that, I mean, all of it.
Yeah, and
The enormous amounts of fuel that customers are paying for. Like, how do people have any sort of assurance that there is, some independent oversight that is going into that charge, which is like the biggest charge that they see on their bill, right? And again, this is going to ratepayers understanding what they're paying for.
and you're absolutely correct. And my understanding is, and as far as CUC is concerned, is that that's what the CPUC will do. That's what they do. What we present to them, what we justify as our expenses are all debated. And what CPUC has done in the past is they've hired a contractor, and at the time was Georgetown. And those Georgetown's experts, in all these different areas, and that's what they do for multiple utilities. And again, they have nothing to do with CUC other than show up at the table and debate our requests for an increase or decrease. And so we have a high level on both sides discussing and representing each side. And I think what they've done is that's what they do on a case-to-case basis,
I
representing
remember
representing the government.
I remember that, but that hasn't happened then since 2014.
Yeah, and you're absolutely right, but that's part of revamping or reinitiating again the CPUC program, and that's going to be part of it. That is part of that whole oversight. And believe me, there's been many times we don't agree because we believe it should be this, and we go back and forth. And believe me, it is literally thousands of questions that come from one request. Literally thousands of questions that have come from one request for any increase up or down. So it is dissected over and over, but by representatives of CPUC
Right.
and
right.
CUC.
And so in the absence of that independent regulatory commission, the only body that is asking questions then of the rates is this body, right? Just the legislature, right? And that's a problem of governance, from my perspective anyway. My next question, Mr. Director, is about this $150 credit that CUC has been able to apply, at least for residential ratepayers. Could you speak to what impact that has actually had in terms of alleviating the burden on CUC customers?
I don't know how to answer that other than the impact would be they pay $150 less. And I'm sure.
How much has CUC actually received from the government then to provide the subsidy?
How much was? $7.6 million is what was distributed.
Do you anticipate any more such credits?
1 second. $10 million was 600 per residential.
Yeah.
May I piggyback on Rep. Tina's question on the $150? Because I do have a question phrased for that particular concern. And maybe the fiscal CFO can answer the question. On January 13, 2022, it was published that 12,682 electric accounts, 12,000 have received the credit of $500, which totals $6 million. Did CUC receive only $6 million or the entire $7.5 million of ARPA funds for these vouchers? If $7.5 million was received, what was done to the remaining 1.5? Will it fund the $150 voucher set to come out in July 2022? Yes?
Chair, the CUC received 7.5 million.
Can you speak further into the microphone, please? Thank you.
CUC received a check for 7.5 million. And the first distribution in January at $500 per active electric customer totaled about 6 million, and the remaining 1.5 was 1.6 was distributed to the 150
So my
residential
assumption is
accounts.
correct.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, well, now I'm actually more confused. So I thought that you had just said, Director, that to pay the $150 credit, or to distribute the $150 credit, CUC received a check for 7.6 million.
Right. As soon as I said that, I was corrected by Betty,
Oh.
and that's why I was very happy that
Okay.
that the chairwoman asked that question for clarification. And I was going to break in and apologize to you that I was thinking of the whole thing when we received it, how it was broken. It was in the two parties. But to answer your question forward, was because you ended with that, is that do we anticipate anything forward? I really don't know. These funds just come, but it is my understanding, correct, that we were informed that there should be something in September and October and September, in October.
September or October.
And a
October.
little bit on, some in
Okay.
September. But again, we're dependent on receiving the funds, but that's what I'm being informed.
Okay, so for this $150 credit, you were just using the remaining balance from the initial $10 million, $7.5 million tranche. Okay, thank you for clarifying that. Could you give us some updates on how many customers have been disconnected since the rates, the FAC went up? Was it in May and then June?
Disconnections occur daily. I don't have the number today, but in total, our customer count actually has increased because it allowed, although the rate was for active electric residentials that have consumption, meaning it's not an empty home. It also allowed us to give customers who are willing to get back on the grid, meaning they've been disconnected for some time.
Mhm.
So we have customers that haven't bought prepaid load in a while, or are only with water services that came online, and it allowed the stimulus was allowed to be used for their reconnection fees and deposits or whatever they needed to get power back.
Yeah.
So I think we have a slight increase in the count of customers opposed to disconnection.
So more than the 12,000, the number that Senator.
The 12,600, that
Delivered.
was the total number of accounts. And the 12,000 was an estimate. We issued almost 12,000, I think 11,000, 900 customers. So it's pretty close.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, so I want to stay on the subject of the credit vouchers. So let's go back in time. This is when the casino was first licensed, right? And former governor, the late Governor Enos had transferred, I believe, $10 million to CUC. So can you tell this committee what was the source of the $500 CUC voucher in 2014 or 2015? I believe that was a time period. And how much was the total value of the vouchers when the voucher credits ended? Is there still funding remaining from this initial voucher funds?
Yes. So I guess I understood it as there was a $10 million agreement with this community chest that.
Exactly.
Okay.
I'm referring to the
Refer
community
that.
benefit fund.
Okay.
Uh-huh.
So the voucher that went out, which was the first round was 600, I want to say 638, 686, something like that. But it was in a little over 600. And the number of customers that it was distributed out was I think over 13,000. because it didn't have restrictions of active residential. The criteria was as long as the household had an electric meter, it would avail of the voucher at the time. And then the second round was, I want to say 130, 100, it was less than $140. So whatever was remaining unused after 1 year was redistributed out again to the same customers. And that came out to be less than $140.
Can we get a report on that? Specifically, that references the Community Benefit Fund that was given to CUC. The initial amount that was given to CUC, the number of transactions, whatever it is, number of monies that went out, 638, and then later on, whatever it is. And then you just do the math
Sure.
all the way down until it fully exhausts the funding to CUC on that particular revenue that was provided to the Utilities Corporation. You do know that as to date, as we speak, we are still trying also to collect as a CNMI state the remainder of the Community Benefit Fund, unpaid taxes, and things like that relative to the casino. I am looking at your 2019 audit report, and I notice your bad debt write-offs are for power is $1.6 million, water is $3.2 million, sewer is $1.6 million, and the total write-off is basically you're classifying it as a bad debt. I would assume you're writing that off. 6,539,633. Do you normally write off this much uncollectible receivables every year? Or what is your percentage of write-offs every year when you start to close out your books?
It's essentially any account that is past 60 days delinquent. Automatically, they get put in allowance. They're not written off, but they're placed in an allowance account, and it doesn't prevent us from pursuing collections. But it's an accounting practice
Understood.
just to be conservative on what is typically viewed as collectible from what you build. So they would make that allowance.
Right, and as we move forward in time, the utilities obviously is putting this particular formula somewhere in all the other formulas that you're working in.
Yes.
As earlier stated about the bad debt component,
Yes.
is pretty much to try and collect what was,
Yes.
bad debt allowance, subsequently written off, and you're just trying to collect
Yes.
what is really your receivable that you were not able to collect on ordinary circumstances,
Correct.
correct?
Yes.
Okay. I have a lot of financial questions for the utilities. So on your 2019 audit, it also states a prepayment to vendors for services at $1.4 million. My question is this standard CUC business practice to prepay for services that have not been received? And how is this prepayment worked into the cost applied to CUC customers?
I can't say it's standard. It's a standard business practice, but that's the reality we face out here with some of our vendors that in order to do business with them, they would require the CUC to pay for a product or for services upfront. And these are typically critical vendors in
Yeah.
most cases that we really have no one else to turn to but these vendors. So it's
Understood. So can you describe to this committee, who are these vendors? I mean, I could think, I mean, it's a substantial amount of money, $1.4 million of prepayment. I wouldn't think it's a local vendor. I would think it's an off-island vendor, maybe a power generation vendor, just for clarification.
It's for a lot of repairs that need to be performed on our heavy equipment. There are limited vendors
Okay.
on the island. We are supplier of parts from the manufacturer. They typically require payment upfront. And again, if they're the only supplier and manufacturer of the part, then You know, it's not like we don't have an option really, any other option to go or any other vendor to
Yeah.
go to. Yeah,
Thank you.
you're welcome.
You have further question? Right. Okay, so it was mentioned earlier that the AR, which is accounts receivable, was it $40 million that I heard? What is your largest public account receivable? That's one question. And what is your largest private account receivable amount?
The largest account receivable is a government account.
The government
It's a government account.
on the public side, public
Yeah.
sector,
yeah.
right? And that amount
I
is-
don't, yeah, I don't know, not that I don't know, I could get the information, I just don't recall who the largest commercial customer is,
Okay.
whether it's a retail customer, or is it a hotel or something like that. But typically our commercial customers or our residential customers are, I have to say, relatively good payers of their
Mhm.
bills. You know, I mean, if there's any problematic account, it would be our government accounts.
Okay, so in looking at your population base, your ratepayers, obviously, so you have the mode, which is the greater amount of, I mean, the greater number would be the paying consumers, the ordinary, right, accounts. Is it safe to say that these particular customer ratepayers are subsidizing the accounts receivables from your public sector side account that is in arrears of whatever millions of dollars that is? Which, as you stated, it's the largest accounts receivable of CUC.
The answer is yes.
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 So the ordinary ratepayers are pretty much subsidizing the uncollected accounts receivables that the government owes CUC.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you for that clarification. CUC's 2019 audit report further states that CUC is subject to concentration of credit risk consisting principally of cash demand deposits, accounts receivables, and receivables from related parties. Can you expand on this particular statement? I do understand that FDIC insurance is per account, I believe, or per depositor is $250,000. And CUC has deposits in your latest audit report, actually, that just came out from OPA. September 30, 2020 and 2019 combined. Total unrestricted cash and cash equivalents were $32.015 million and $29.056 million respectively. And the corresponding bank balances were $33.080 million and $29.1 million respectively. It further stated that of the bank balance amounts, $32.9 million and $28.8 million respectively are maintained in financial institutions subject to FDIC insurance, and $177,000 and $284,000 respectively represents amounts maintained in a non-FDIC insured bank as of September 30, 2020 and 2019. CNMI law does not require component unit funds to be collateralized, and thus CUC's funds in excess of FDIC insurance are uncollateralized. Accordingly, these deposits are exposed to custodial credit risk. The definition of custodial credit risk is, for deposits, is the risk that in the event of the failure of a depository financial institution, a government would not be able to recover its deposits or would not be able to recover collateral securities that are in the possession of an outside party. Are you comfortable in putting all your eggs in one basket?
Sorry. It is a fact that the amount of deposits exceed the FDIC insured limits, but it is also a fact that any excess amounts are secured by the institution. In other words, they have pledged the amount of excess cash amount, the amount in excess of the FDIC deposit. They've pledged a sufficient funding to cover the excess amount. There's collateral, in other words, for the excess deposit.
Your audit report says are uncollateralized, and if you're making a public statement this afternoon that the financial institution is giving you a guarantee that should their bank go south, that it would guarantee you in excess of the FDIC insurance on your account deposits, that you will be paid that money out,
There is collateral.
is absolutely different from what the statement of the audit report is stating right now.
Well, the statement is made by the auditors that it exceeds the FDIC security deposit amount. That's true. That's very true.
Are
It just did not
uncollateralized.
elaborate on the fact that we have the excess amount is collateralized by the institution, by the financial
And you
institution.
have that in documentation.
We have it in
Can we get a
documentation.
copy of that?
Sure.
Thank you very
Yes.
much.
You're welcome.
It only provides comfort in case it goes the other way, right? Representative BJ Actor, do you have any question? Okay, I'm going to go on with my questions. The 2020 year-end report, the Governor's Council of Economic Advisors recommended for CUC to conduct a cost of service study. Can you tell this committee if this recommendation has been effectuated?
Yes,
Yes?
it has. Yes.
Okay. Any outcome to date on your study? Is there any report that we could look at if you have done the study? You can restate your statement if there's no study being done. You want to get back to me on that? Is that okay?
Yeah, we'll get back with you,
Okay, all right.
Chair. We're going to, of course, forward it to our Board of Directors, who then will
Sure.
forward it.
Okay.
Thanks.
All right, now, House Bill 22105 has been introduced to offset FAC increases with revenue derived from the liquid fuel tax. Has CUC reviewed this bill, and how much of an impact would this offset decrease the FAC rate retro to July 1st, 2022? Have you analyzed this?
Can you repeat that again?
House Bill 22105 has been introduced to offset the FAC increases with revenue derived from the liquid fuel tax. Has CUC reviewed this bill, and how much of an impact would this offset decrease the FAC rate retro to July 1st, 2022? You can get back to us on that if you have not reviewed the bill itself.
The House bill, we did review and we provided comments. And we're waiting for responses to some of the comments.
Okay, thank you for that. Now, CUC speaks of portfolio diversification. In fact, the industry itself is encouraged to adopt such business practices. Has there been any recent update to the CNMI Energy Plan, a living document that will be regularly updated by the task force, and that of the CNMI Strategic Energy Plan?
Yes, we do. I mean, mentioning the question by Congressman Camacho, we will provide, and we are working closely with, as we are members of the task force. We do provide some updates, and we do collaborate with them. I do understand too that what we do at CUC will provide them updates on, but on some of the things that we're doing, we believe is part of the plan. Our plan then should be part of that plan.
Has the task force convened? Has there been any most recent update to the plan itself that we could access for review? Or is what we're looking at the only most recent report that was done for the CNMI?
Yeah, that I think should be channeled through the chairperson, Thelma Eno, for the update on the
And
task
who would
force.
that be?
Thelma Enos.
Okay.
Yeah, with the energy division.
All right.
Yeah.
Has COC explored, as recommended in numerous reports, to include the 2020 year-end report, Governor's Council of Economic Advisors, on using the energy futures market or fuel price method program to reduce the price risk swings in world oil markets, essentially safeguarding COC customers from the inherent volatility of fuel prices? If not, why not?
No, we have not. That's something that we obviously like to and need to get approval in any consideration by the CPUC. Any impact to rates and everything is channeled through that entity. And if not with them, then obviously it's, I don't know if it's the legislature.
I would like to recommend to COC to maybe make contact with other Pacific jurisdictions such as American Samoa, and I believe Palau is hedging their oil as well. So you might want to tap into your regional partners, your neighbors, and see how they're doing it.
We have had discussions, but moving forward in any of it, we've been kind of, the understanding is that the CPUC, from what I'm hearing, is through the media, of course, that they're trying to reconvene and get members to be able to do so, and that's one of the items that we wanted to discuss with them.
Yeah, I think, CPUC members have just been confirmed, Basa and I believe Mr. Kidwa from Rhoda. I would strongly urge COC to maybe get into the driver's seat and accelerate the conversation, for the benefit of the consumers. A lot of, again, the fact rate is really hurting a lot of families, everybody. It's just not affordable. We can't have our people choose between putting food on the table or buying medicine, or to keep power on and water. It's just painful to hear that suffering in the community. And as a system, all of us, we need to explore all remedies and creativity in the market that we could find and utilize to the benefit of our people. And I believe it would also help COC as well, to be on a much more stronger footing with respect to trying to maintain itself and operate the utilities efficiently.
And thank you.
I think the futures market would be one avenue of trying to find that remedy out there to bring down the cost that are passed on to consumers.
Yes, thank you for that. And as I mentioned earlier, there have been discussions, and we'll continue those discussions regarding that.
Thank you. How much is COC generating from the $7 monthly customer charge? And what is this revenue paying for? And is COC and its board willing to remove this added cost on its customer?
Go ahead, Greg.
No, I was just going to say that I don't have the details on that. I mean, we certainly can provide it.
Okay.
It's readily available. I just didn't bring it with me.
All right. Okay.
Thank you.
And do consider whether it's something that you could take off from the customers. I mean, this is non-fuel expense, right? It's pretty much, it seems more administrative. And if it's something that COC can do away with and still survive and be able to provide services needed by the community, I think you can reconsider that $7 service charge. It does make an impact to families, especially that are earning $7.25 an hour minimum wage. It's just, I like to appeal to COC to have consideration. Thank you.
To answer what the monthly customer charge is for, customers can stay connected to CUC, but not actually use any usage. So the $7 charge is still assessed on those accounts. It's assessed to all accounts, active accounts. The charge is supposed to cover the cost of having to go out and read the meters every month, running bills, printing bills every month, even though a customer doesn't have usage necessarily, we still have to let them know that, there's no usage. So it's covering the cost of the meter reading program, the billing program, and that cost is not part of the other base charges that's on the rates.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm still going to ask if you can reconsider taking it off. looking at your change in net position for 2019, of course, 2020 audit rate, administrative section. So you come out on a positive balance. So I'm thinking, if we were to go back and just calculate how many accounts are out there times $7 per account, I understand it's substantial to CUC, but a $7 difference in somebody's power bill, it does help. So I'm just appealing to CUC to have that conversation intimately and consider if there's something that we could do to our customers. Now, let me move on. What is CUC's to date under recovery balance? Maybe I'll answer my own question. I noticed your fiscal year 20 audit, it stayed at $7,341,652. I read your audit report. And do you anticipate requesting CPUC to adjust the current fact formula to avoid further growth of CUC's under recovery balance? Or does CUC feel the current adjusting fact formula is manageable at 4.5% plus or minus? You can get back to me on that if you need to.
No, we would love to go back to the opportunity to go back to the receipt, the PUC to reflect our actual costs.
Mhm.
You know, I mean, I think if you refer to the income statement itself, I mean, you can look at our fuel costs and compare that to what our fact revenues are, and you're going to see that they don't line up. So again, that goes back to the earlier statement about the fact rate doesn't recover our full
Yeah,
cost.
there's a lot of analyzing
Yeah.
that needs to be done internally by the institution itself. And now that the CPUC board is organized, I think a lot of financial conversation needs to be happening. I do understand that your greatest expense is the purchase of fuel, obviously, and industry standards does accept that. The fact is it's just one component in order for the utility, company to survive, pretty much. But at the same time, when we talk about the MOPS and the formula and, up or down, well, 4.5%, that's why I asked that very legitimate question. If it's something that CUC and CPUC moving forward will be having a conversation on whether 4.5% plus or minus is comfortable, or is this something that could be turning into a conversation of adjusting that rate on a higher level to reduce the $7 million that you need to recover with respect to your fuel purchase. It's just something that is reality, and we might as well start talking about it so that whatever is going to be anticipated out there in the future, that it doesn't come as a surprise.
Sure. And if I may, Chairwoman, we've had those discussions, lots of those discussions in regards to the 4.5 thresholds above and below. Raising it just continues then to provide CUC the requirement to sustain and pay for those before any recovery is triggered. And those, again, CUC would have to recover those rates somehow, because it would not have the funding to be able to be able to address that higher threshold. So again, these are discussions we've had multiple times. In fact, we had even and raised that issue to see if we can raise it and not impact the consumer. But then we started to realize by raising it, then the funding would have to come internally, and the question was, where is it going to come internally?
And I think this kind of conversation takes us to the higher level of urgency in terms of portfolio diversification, just so that this 4.5 rate obviously is still very unaffordable for the majority of the consumers out there, and diversifying the portfolio of CUC would only bring much more positive results on a lower level end to the consumers, meaning they pay out less, and you have a much more affordable rate moving forward.
Yeah, I guess that's the rationale. However, I do want to mention that regardless of how much solar we have, photovoltaic on renewables, I mean, 33 acres for 2.5 cent reduction. Again, if we even expand it even further to an additional 33 hectares for an additional 2.5 cent reduction. Right now, the biggest impact for cost for savings would be a new power plant. New power plant could easily reduce the rate by 6 to 8 cents, if not more. because of the operation of this existing power plant, which is those engines are over 50 years old, between the savings of fuel oil, lube oil, and then of course the intensive labor requirements, and then of course the old obsolete engines whose prices are far tripled, and maybe quadrupled from what they were some years back because of obsoleteness. And then of course we would be able to have a much more viable power plant that would then could take into consideration the hotel loads, and then expand on the economies of scale, and that would help reduce the residential rate considerably, overall, actually for commercial also. So that's the area that we've been targeting. But that between that and then coupled with the added benefit of the renewable energies, I think then and only then are we going to get the savings that's going to be beneficial at the impact that we're all seeking. So it's not only renewable and disregard a new power plant. We need to address the power plant that we and replace it to secure our economic growth forward.
I want to thank you for that. Um, I want to go back to that amount of money that's sitting in financial institutions. So I'm sure that's not in a savings account, right? It has to be in some kind of an investment portfolio. Maybe that's generating a much more better yield than a savings account or a TCD account. I know that maybe customer deposits are placed in time deposits, right?
The security deposits are in a savings account, not a TCD.
Which
And then,
one is in a savings account? The
the
millions of
security-
dollars in a savings account?
There's about $12 million of security deposits. That's sitting in a savings account.
$12 million in a savings account.
Yes.
And what is the yield on that savings account?
Today's yield, under percent. It's under 1%. I
Under
believe.
1%.
Yes. Those are the customer security deposits.
Okay. And what is the, it's just, I think it's a great conversation to look at if we're talking about the financial institution providing a guarantee, right? For the excess of FDIC insured deposit accounts, then I would think in the best interest of the customer, if I recall correctly in my research and readings of CUC, that there is a public law that allows CUC to use the customer's deposit accounts, right? And I would think that prudently, you would want to put that particular deposit account of the customer in a much more greater yielding account rather than a less than 1% yielding account. Wouldn't that be prudent?
Yes, and also there's, the risk that we also have to put into consideration. And I'm assuming that in the past it was put in the savings account because the corporation at the time was very risk averse.
Yeah,
I can't find any other,
understand. But what I'm
So-
saying is because the utility is able to utilize the customer deposits for its operations or whatever expenses provided.
no.
If not, then again, okay, so if it's not using it right now, but prior law did allow that, so it's no longer so. That's what we're saying today. But still, what I'm saying is holding the customer deposit in an account that is yielding less than 1%. I'm talking about prudent management, right? Because obviously that deposit account has to go back to the customer eventually, but that's years down the road if the customer closes out the account or whatever happens there. It's just to get a better return on the deposit account is what I'm saying, rather than sitting in a 1% yielding less than 1% savings account for a substantial amount of deposit for every depositor. I mean, if a commercial account required by CUC, for example, to put in $10,000 deposit, would you put that 10,000 in a less than 1% yielding account where you could probably get more yield from a time deposit account that particular financial institution may offer or another institution may offer? It's just something to think about because, again, it is, what is best for the customer in a sense. Just because you're holding the deposit doesn't mean you can't make prudent judgment, prudent decisions, right? And placing them in a much more greater yield account.
I agree.
Yeah.
And again, there's prudence in
Yeah.
also takes into consideration risk.
Yes,
That's all. And there is some liquidity also that we, I mean, we have customers every week terminating or leaving the system.
Mhm.
So, I mean, it's not infrequent. They leave the system and we're refunding the deposit. And
yeah,
so,
I think what I'm saying is, regardless of the number of activities happening on a weekly basis, on a monthly basis, whether they're terminating or opening accounts, the point I'm trying to make is to put that amount of deposit in a much more greater yielding account. That's all.
we'll explore the other
Yeah.
options.
All right.
Thank you. Yes.
Thank you. Now, on your schedule of electric charges and rates, it states municipal pumping. Correct me if I'm wrong. Monthly rate of $9.06. Can you tell this committee where on the customer billing does this particular monthly cost is attached to?
Madam Chair, the municipal pumping is the internal rates for our CUC. So we meter all our wells, all our facilities, and so that's the charge for CUC. That's what CUC pays internally. So our
So-
power bills are water and sewer facilities, the municipal pumping charges.
So you're saying that that is a absorbed cost that COC takes on? It's not passed on to the consumers? Is that what you're stating today?
It's expensed on the power side, which eventually then is in the rates as well.
Okay.
I'm sorry, it's expensed on the water and wastewater side.
Water and wastewater.
Yes, so water and wastewater pay for power services.
Okay, so somewhere in there within the power bill of the customer, it's
In the
worked
water,
into the formula.
in the water and the wastewater
Okay,
charges, yes.
all right. Because the fact is not on the water. Right? Okay.
The water has to pay FAC.
Is that the fact? The 906? Okay, now, I asked for the official notices, and obviously Mobile had sent a letter, so I'm not going to ask this question. We're going to deal with it legally. Can you briefly describe to this committee what is the cost of service distinction? And are these cost of service distinctions taken into account in designing the FAC, and similarly that of the base rate? And you can get back to me on that.
Could you repeat that question?
Can you briefly describe to this committee what is the cost of service distinction? And are these cost of service distinctions taken into account in designing the FAC, and similarly that of the base rate?
Yeah, I'm not sure. Yeah,
I mean, the cost of service is inclusive of the cost of doing business. So it includes all elements of our business. And typically that's what a cost of service study or cost of service would reflect. How much does it cost us to deliver service to our customers?
So is this particular cost attached to the FAC as well, or is that's just restricted to the base rate? Or is it in both formulas?
She's asking if it's base or FAC, which of the two elements is the cost of
Well,
service?
base rate is operation, which also includes, our other costs of doing the FAC rate, the other cost of doing business. The FAC rate is specific to just the fuel costs.
So the answer is yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
That's what the question is asking.
Thank you.
So it's for both.
Yes.
Okay. Now, your recent FAC release dated July 29, 2022 went down by 6 cents, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Now, can you tell this committee what was the percentage decrease that resulted on lowering the FAC? Is it?
It was 43 cents per kilowatt hour in Oh, the percentage decrease?
I think I'm leaning to your 4.5 up or down, which is the approved fact rate formula from CPUC. And so when you go prior 0.43285 less your current 0.37241 equals your 0.06. You divide that by your current 0.43285. It gives you down 13.95% from CPUC approved 4.5 or 9.5% above CPUC 4.5. I kind of like pretty much work that formula out myself to understand exactly what you guys are doing. No mathematician gave me this.
I'm sorry, can you repeat the question again? What was the percentage decrease in the fact rate?
Yeah, your recent fact release dated July 29, 2022 went down by 6 cents, correct? And you validate that? Can you tell this committee what was the percentage decrease that resulted on lowering the fact? So if you have your fact
14%.
from prior and current, then you would figure out the percentage, right?
14%?
Yeah, 13.95% pretty
Yes.
much.
Correct.
Pretty close. 14%, thank you.
Yes.
So I know how you guys do it already. Okay. CUC's recent $150 credit to residential electric accounts was stated on CUC's press release dated June 30, 2022 as a grant from the governor's office, a grant. Can you tell this committee what was the total grant before the 150 and the purpose of this grant to CUC? And will this grant be replaced by the governor's office?
It was the ARPA funds.
Okay, and it's a grant.
Yes.
And
which
what is the purpose of the grant? I'm sure it's for something, right?
It was the stimulus credits, utility stimulus that we discussed earlier.
So it's really not a grant to CUC. You're just a conduit to pass through, right? It's not a grant, correct? When we talk like that in the press release, it gives us the impression that you're given this money for your need and that you were given the permission to go ahead and pay out the $150 voucher credits, right? But really, it's not money on your books. You're just a pass through because you hold the energy accounts for your customers, correct? Yes?
I can answer the question of
Huh?
whether or not it's a grant. It is a grant. For accounting purposes,
Yeah, it's
we
a grant.
will consider it. It'll be reported in our financials as a grant.
Right.
I mean, we did benefit from it too, to CUC.
But it's just a pass through, pretty much. It washes out.
That's the reality, yes.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Okay. I just wanted that clarification on the books. Yeah. I figured that out. You guys want to take a 5-minute break? You're good? Okay. Committee members, are you okay? All right. Can you tell this committee if there is a duplication of responsibilities between the COC board and that of CPUC? And any recommended changes to existing enabling legislations that pertains to CUC?
I don't believe, based on its definition and purpose, I don't believe that there is redundancy. There's a completely different purpose for the board and a completely different purpose for the CPUC. And as long as we stay in those definitions, and I think it's perfectly fine. Now, as far as legislation, I think most definitely, as you've mentioned a few times earlier, that is something that needs a whole different conversation, as we have a considerable amount of legislation, and I have over the last three different after the last 3 different elections, I have come up here and the first week and requested to discuss legislation impacting the operation of CUC, at least for open discussion and determination of their obsoleteness or even if they're valid at this time, but to review them and potentially remove them or create and modify them in ways that would be beneficial, of course, to the consumer and the sustainability of the utilities.
We look forward to that. Now, I want to move on to the HR side of the house. Can you tell this committee how many of your employees are members of the DC plan? And is CUC current with its 4% contribution to each member's individual account? No arrears of employer share?
I do not know how many members exactly, but
can get back
on
to
the
us on that?
second half,
But we are current. So whatever whatever our obligations are,
I
we
asked the
are
question
current.
because we all know that a lot of the government employees moved out of the DB plan when the retirement fund went into settlement, right? And now they had the option, it's not mandatory that you become a member of the DC plan, obviously. And people are just beginning to build up on their credits with Social Security, eventually coming to 62 or the normal retirement age or final retirement age for that matter. So our concern here is that we want to build, we want to make sure that our government employees, including the autonomous agencies, have a sense of security with respect to building a retirement program for them. And it's always important for me, especially, to know whether employers within the government and autonomous agencies, what percentage of their working employees are a member of a certain retirement fund program. And if not, then, what is happening to protect that employee's future annuity income when they retire from your organization or move on in life for that matter.
absolutely. And we are also very concerned about ensuring their abilities to sustain their lives through a retirement program. Now, I'm sure we do have some, which I actually questioned a couple of years ago as to why some of them do not have insurance.
Mhm.
Many have said that because their spouse is working for the government also. So there's a variety of different things, but all of our employees are provided insurance, and it's up to them at that point to make determination whether they want to keep it or not.
Okay. Now, staying on HR, do you have a employee handbook?
Yes, we do.
Yes, you do. Is that on your website?
I'm not
That is
sure.
accessible to the public to
I'm not,
read?
I'm not sure, but I can take a look at it.
Okay. Can you get back to us on that?
Sure,
Please get
absolutely.
us a copy. That would be interesting to read. Do you pay hazardous pay to your employees?
It is our understanding that we did until we had brought in a consultant who provided a review of our compensation program. And this was a firm out of the US, Fox and Lawson. And what they had done is embedded our understanding. And yes, embedded the hazardous, and yes, we are paying hazardous.
Okay, so it's embedded in their rate of pay. Is that what we're saying? That we are at the industry standard as recommended? Is that verifiable?
Yes, we've embedded, but recently we have again added an additional, I think, 10%, depending on the job and the hazards involved in the job. But yes, we've added additional to that 10%.
Okay, so most recent, a lot of the occupations and hazardous, occupations are given that additional 10% just to be at par with the industry standard recommendations. Is that what you're saying?
Correct. And we did ask for even more. I did, management did, but due to economics, our board did state that due to our economic condition, we will be pursuing that again in the next round.
Okay, you do agree, right, that, yeah, taking care of your people, I mean, they're out there doing dangerous work, so obviously, it reminds me of a miner, when I was in West Virginia, when they go into the mine, and they always say this to themselves, am I gonna come out to go home to my family? Similarly, with your employees that are doing hazardous occupations work for your utilities, I'm sure that question comes to mind every morning when they wake up to go climb that power pole or to do whatever they're doing out there for CUC and the people of the Commonwealth. Am I going to make it home after work today to go back to my family? So that's something that I wanted to bring up to your attention, that hazardous pay, if it's embedded in their rate of pay today, that's good. And if something future coming more for their income, that's even better.
Yeah, it is, or it has been. And then, as I mentioned earlier, Chairwoman, we did increase it we did apply 10%. But although we were interested in even a higher number, but economically, that was what's what I argued, and but again, it was approved at 10% and moved, and we would then pursue that again this next fiscal year, and we'll continue to do so.
Thank you.
And we will probably include night differential and other premiums that were once available to our
Wonderful.
team.
That's very encouraging.
All right.
Thank you so much. Let's move on to Agreco. So CUC is paying $3.6 million, correct? Can you tell this committee where is CUC sourcing its funding to pay for the monthly $300,000 a month for Agreco?
It's from our revenue funds, what we collect from our customers.
From your revenue collections on all accounts?
Yes.
Okay. On the solar farm, I know this was way back in time where during the Precinct 2, Rep. Tina, if you remember, at the multipurpose center, and Director Gary, you were there too, and you were talking about the solar farm and how you needed to identify land within the Commonwealth. I'm sure the greater source of land is coming from Saipan. Can you tell this committee exactly where have you identified locations for the potential sites of those solar farms?
We did reach out to the Department of Public Lands, and they've been very professional in working with us. We did review, and we put in our request and through discussion as to what our plans were and what we needed. We believe we need to do. We expressed the volume of land that we need, and some of the requirements to ensure efficiency, most efficiency for a system. Now, they came and we had met with the secretary, Mr. Igosmar, and also his team, and they provided options. We reviewed those options, and we determined that these would be the most practical areas. So we are now waiting for confirmation. We haven't necessarily secured the land itself for designation, but these are the proposed areas that they believe that they're working on to see if we can have access to. Now, again, this would be land not owned by CUC or not handed over to CUC, but rather a designation for the purpose of a renewable farm. And at some point when we no longer need it for that purpose, it would then revert back for full use by the government.
Thank you. Thank you.
And what we want to do is our idea is to try to get as close as possible to the 34,500 kVA or kV transmission line, which is between the power plant and the Waterloo substation. So then we can feed that large amount of power and energy into that without incurring extended costs to building a system to accommodate the power and energy coming out of a system like that. So it would be revolving around a substation or near that 34.5 cable.
Okay. Well, thank you. Thank you for that. COC appeared before the House on July 6, 2022, under the PUTC committee. And I believe it was the fiscal officer from COC that stated that a full cost recovery of fuel purchase is not the case and that COC is actually losing money. How often is COC buying fuel, and what is the average fuel purchase cost? And where is COC sourcing the additional revenue to make the fuel purchase?
The only source for our fuel costs would be from our revenue funds, which is from our customers. There's no other source for our fuel purchases. So, annually we've been averaging about $40 to $50 million in fuel costs. So monthly, off the top of my head, that's about $4+ million monthly in bills that we pay to our supplier.
Okay, thank you for that. That's very important to know. I want to talk to you about your dividends. I noticed your quarterly report to the legislature reported $900,000, correct, on those preferred stocks.
Correct.
And the holder of the preferred stock is,
The Commonwealth Development Authority.
okay, and you generate, what is the yield on your preferred stock?
It's guaranteed 2% annual dividend on $45 million par value preferred stock.
Okay. Now, do you transfer the entire dividend revenue that you generate on your preferred stock to CDA, or you just transfer the amount of preferred stock payments pursuant to the promissory note that CUC had entered into with CDA? And if so, what happens to the excess income generated on the preferred stocks?
Um, We're not generating any income on the preferred stocks. The CDA, Commonwealth Development Authority, is a stockholder of the corporation and in the form of preferred stock.
So you just move it all over to them,
Yes,
with respect
2%
to-
annually of
and
that
you claim
par.
it as an expense?
Correct.
Okay.
Yes.
So you're going on record that you do not keep back any of that income?
There's absolutely no income at all from that
Okay.
preferred stock. It's all dividend expense.
All right. Now, I know that the law states that CUC is not supposed to be a profit-making enterprise, correct? Correct? Okay. Yes? You agree?
I can't say I'm very familiar with the
Yeah.
mandate, and I'm not an attorney, so
It was
I
established.
would surmise to say,
Well, it
Yeah.
was, I make references to legislation,
Okay.
obviously. I will not be making a public statement if it's not stated so. And so it was established by Public Law 4-47, as amended by Public Law 5-47 as a public corporation, right? And so my question is, the excess of revenue, does it pass on to customers? Considering that in the laws itself, it speaks about CUC wholly is owned by the Commonwealth government.
I would, if the CUC generates excess revenue, it would be largely attributable to the grants we receive from primarily the federal government. Other than that, there would really be nothing driving any excess income. And I would recommend if to consider also looking at our operating income or not operating income or losses, which would be total revenues generated less operating costs. And that really would tell you the true story, whether or not we're making any money. Because anything beyond that, the federal, for example, if you look at the 2020 audit,
Yeah.
We are reporting, let's see, I believe you're looking at, sorry. What's being reported as a change in net position of $8,035,000. If from that, there's almost 5.2 of that is federal grants.
Mhm.
And then there's also I'm sorry. And there's also almost 2.4 million of that is from appropriations to the CUC for certain capital projects.
Mhm.
So if you take both of that, I mean, it almost sums up to the $8 million. So a lot of that income or that change in net position wasn't generated primarily from what we bill our customers. It came more from outside sources as opposed to internal sources, which would be what we bill our customers and what we collect from our customers.
Which are, farmed out for future projects.
Correct, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, your 2019 audit states any difference between the actual fuel cost and the electric fuel rate is accumulated in a deferred account and is subject to annual reconciliation. No interest is charged or paid on any under or over recovery balance in the deferred account. How often does CUC conduct true-up adjustments on its books? And do any of these true-up adjustments benefit pass on to CUC's customers intended to avoid overcharges recovered from ratepayers, in other words, excess profits for the utility? And what is the current value of the deferred account? And now, mind you, I'm taking all of these from your audit report.
Sure, it's my understanding that the true-up function is a process that is performed with the PUC. And as I've heard earlier that we all understand that there's no active PUC. So there isn't any reconciliation right now on that process. So,
Okay,
But-
so when was the last time any actual true-up reconciliation done? Was it from the last time that CPUC ever met? And how many years are we talking about with respect to reconciling these fuel costs so that if there's any benefit to the consumers that will pass back to them, what are we talking about?
The last true up, we believe, was done in 2014. And the commission continued to, I believe, 2015. The last document we got out from them was when they approved to change the name to FAC, Fuel Adjustment Charge, from the it was formerly known as LEAC, which stands for Levelized Energy Adjustment Clause.
Yeah, it's just a change of title, right? From
Yes.
LEAC to FAC.
Yeah.
It means the same thing, really. The function is the same.
Right, that
But
was in
so-
2015, but I think we believe that it was in 2014 when the last true up was done.
So we're talking about 8 years of no reconciliation, no true-up whatsoever, because that body was essentially dysfunctioned or non-functional at all. And so the consumers were basically, I read through it, and it's supposed to be just an interim rate, but because it's not functioning and there's no appointees going through, and only now we have 2. So are we talking about 8 years of reconciliation and potentially something of benefit to the ratepayers when all of these adjustments are done, whether, it could be plus or minus, right?
One of the elements in the FAC that we didn't mention, only because it's been, I guess, inactive at this time, is the over and under recovery of fuel costs.
I saw that.
Okay, and so it's been 0 since 2014, because prior to that, we had a credit of, I remember, there was a credit in one of our rates because we over recovered. And then when we recovered, when we returned that back in the fuel adjustment charge, CPUC then approved it at 0. That's the last time it was approved. Now we have the opposite situation going on where we're under recovering.
So you're saying that when CPUC approved that technically, right, it's supposed to pass on to the ratepayers. But because CPUC approved it, it was used to be applied to the recovery of the under recovery fuel cost of the institution, correct? Now, I do understand that on your FY20 audit report, your under recovery has ballooned to $7.3 million because you added on the additional $3 million. And that's why it kind of like validated your statement when you appeared before the PTUC House Committee of $7 million unrecovered cost. Yeah. I'm going to go back again to my statement. If we're talking 8 years of no adjustments, no reconciliations, no true-ups, then we're talking about 8 years of work that this new body of newly confirmed CPUC members that they need to sit down and review all the rates on prior years and see how much credit potentially that could benefit the ratepayers on the adjustments. Is that something that has entered the conversation?
Well, yeah, I mean, they would look at the last 8 years, of course, but the true up would be with today's conditions. So they would just go right to today's conditions. What we understand is that the conditions when it was previously trued up was the conditions at that time. And at that time, of course, we didn't have the PSS reduction. I don't believe. We didn't have, of course, the engines were probably more efficient because they were 8 years less of age. And then, of course, we didn't have a variety of different other issues like what is it, Typhoon U2, Typhoon Solar, and a variety of different other areas that would impact the rate. So any true up, then, and we are anticipating, and just as, as opportunistic as anybody else in way of getting the CPUC back together again, and then put the true value of the true up applied to the rate.
Okay, so can we get the exact value of the true up that the CPUC from that point period to whatever point period allowed to take it down as a credit on the recovery balance of CUC? Can you provide that value to this committee? And the reason why I'm asking for that is because when we go back in time, regarding Public Law 16-7, which I did an inquiry to CUC, and you guys responded to me 3-4 months later. Thank you for that. It was a rebate to the customers because MPOT funds was utilized to bring in Agreco at that time period. You see what I'm saying? And so because the true up really, the reconciliation up or down, is supposed to benefit the consumers. And if CPUC at the time period prior made the decision to use that as a credit for the fuel recovery of the utility corporation, then I think it's only fair that we establish that value and to see whether this legislature can work a rebate law that will be applicable to the consumers, again, similar to 16-7. I would like to see that number provided to this committee. Thank you. Yeah. Does CUC have any investment portfolios in any financial institution within the CNMI or outside the CNMI?
I'm sorry, Chair, can you repeat that?
Does CUC have any investment portfolios within the banking institutions in the Commonwealth or anything outside the Commonwealth that you're generating any income from those deposits?
There's approximately $5.7 million in a time certificate of deposit.
Within the Commonwealth?
Yes.
So there's no deposits outside the Commonwealth?
No.
Okay, no corporate bonds from Fortune 500 companies?
No.
Why not?
We're working
You
on
have
it. We are.
You have a better yield.
I know,
Honest.
our problem is still that $40 million. We
The
still have an
mark-
issue with
Yeah,
that,
we'll take care of that somehow,
that
somewhere.
AR. That's been our
Um,
problem.
The market is down right now, so expect a rebound, right?
$40 million, I just got to get that off.
Yeah. Okay. Um, Does your entity have a credit line facility with any financial institution to buy fuel? If so, how much?
No.
You don't?
No.
So you just pay with cash,
Not a
basically?
financial institution. But you have
It's all on a cash basis with our supplier.
Is there a reason why you don't have a credit line facility?
Um,
I asked the question because many years ago, I was a board of trustee for MPOT, and we offered CUC a credit line facility to pay mobile in the amount of $10 million. Your arrears at that time was 10 million, so every time you buy, you never erase your arrears because you're continuously folding your payable account. And the competitive rate was lower than the financial institution that was offering the credit line facility. And that's why I asked the question whether do you have a credit line facility where you can float your cash and reasonably, considering that you hold a substantial amount of deposits in financial institutions. I would think that this kind of products and service can be offered to the utility corporation because you hold a substantial amount of deposit in whichever bank you're banking with. Have you thought about having a credit line facility to a
it's-
certain extent? Because if you think about it, it may be a negotiated rate of interest, right? Where you collect and you pay off as you draw down from your credit line facility, obviously. And that could potentially help the ratepayers reduce their cost on their billings. It's really a financial tool. most companies, when they build up, they get a credit line from a lending institution. They don't just roll out cash, including big corporations that sell stocks. That's why you buy stocks, because they use your money to build their companies, right? It's public money. And you know that the banks take your deposits and they loan out your money for a greater interest rate, and they make money off of your money. So yeah, I'm asking a very important question of why are we not considering this to utilize, and it's a win-win situation for all.
We'd like to consider, we've considered a credit line. We just don't have the liquidity to back up a credit line. Unfortunately, security deposits are not viewed by financial institution as cash of the utility, the utility's cash. So that is something that, you know, we've had discussions about it, but we just don't have the liquidity to back up that credit line. I mean, we have arrangements with our fuel supplier that they would allow to extend credit in the event of, you know, challenging times and all that, but we're not using it. We try to stay on top of our bills and pay our bills on time, and we're living from on the day-to-day basis with just the money we generate, with the cash we generate, and we only spend
Your-
what we can generate and nothing more. So really, there's very little that really can be saved, you know, in our situation. We really are a hand-to-mouth situation. I mean, what comes in goes out to pay for
Earlier
the
it was
system.
stated it's 40 to 50 million annually on fuel cost.
Correct.
And you divvy that up, and every month it's like $4.1 million. So, because again, considering your substantial amount of deposits, liquidity, you have liquidity in your
That's-
deposits, right? You have a guarantee from your financial institutions, and
But
you have a
that's-
$4.1 million of fuel expense on a monthly basis. I just don't see why no financial institution where you put your money in would offer you this kind of a credit line facility to, if you, to use their money too, basically, because they're using your money to loan out your money to make money.
I
And where do the consumers fit in this whole process and equation of benefiting from all of these fact increases? I mean, think
again,
about it. You're running
yeah.
a business.
I understand, and you bring up valid points. The financial institutions collateral on our deposits is what it is. It's collateral, but it's not the property of the utility. I mean, you don't. There's nothing that I can say to that collateral from the bank that it's assets belonging to the corporation. They're guaranteeing it in terms of security in the event the bank goes defunct. Then we can turn to that security. But it's not something that I can say belongs to the corporation that I can use as a form of repayment in the event that I cannot make up live up to my obligations in a line of credit. I'm not sure.
But you don't have a line of credit right now.
Yeah, we don't, because I
Right.
don't have the cash liquidity to support that line of credit in the event the banks are going to want to look at your repayment ability in the event you don't meet the payments on that line of credit. And I can't demonstrate that to the banks right now. Yeah, the security deposits are, you know, that
So-
as well as I do,
so-
is not.
Your $40 million receivable out there that belongs to the public sector, you're pretty much struggling to be bankable. Is that what you guys
Yeah.
are struggling with?
Yeah, that's
So you're not a bankable entity right now because of this huge amount of accounts
Correct.
receivable from
I
the
agree.
government
I
that
agree with you.
no financial institution is willing to even look at you because you're just not bankable at all.
I agree.
You're essentially technically insolvent, pretty much.
I absolutely agree with you that if a financial institution were to take our financial statements right now, they would not see any repayment ability on the part of the
And if
CEC.
you were bankable today, considering, let's say that your $40 million receivable is in your books, what exactly is your grand plan if we were bankable today
Oh,
for the Commonwealth to realize all of these savings across the board for all consumers, commercial, residential, you name it? What exactly is that grand plan? Because that is a serious matter. If this government cannot fulfill its obligation and it prohibits you from moving forward to be a bankable entity for any financial institution out there to even give you a loan, we have a major problem.
Yeah, that's absolutely correct. Utility self-sustainment is of course the premise, and I think that's always been the idea of removing it from the or becoming an autonomous agency. Its ability and the requirements, its ability to recover its cost has been an issue, and then something we haven't spoken about at all today is the stipulated orders. And of course, the federal court has got involved in requiring for full cost recovery in order to ensure that we sustain its operation and provide the water services that we need to bring to this island. So our grand plan, of course, is if we were able to get that and be able, as you be able to be credible and with lending institutions, of course, we would get the power plant that we need and help reduce the kilowatt hour and our dependency on fossil fuels, incorporate renewable energies, and compound the savings through that means. And also, we would able to address the water and wastewater programs. As you know, we are receiving money from EPA, but EPA continuously and Department of Justice continuously asks me, when are you going to be able to when will CUC be able to put in its fair share and be able to provide, because their dollar amounts and funding is restricted to certain areas of the program. But we need to be able and are required to perform maintenance as needed along the way, and of course try to get the quality water supply and wastewater programs. We've got facilities today that need expansion. We need another wastewater facility on the backside of the island. We need to do feasibility studies and inevitably water and wastewater programs on Road and Tinian. We need to do a lot. We need to expand our renewable programs to hopefully be 100% some portions of the day, every day, in the CNMI, as the CNMI has some of the best sunshine in the world. We want to expand all of this, but in order to do that, we need to be able to of course, hopefully get grants and be able to get that type of funding. But at the same token, we don't always get the grants, and therefore we need to start working off the cash register and onto bonds. As you alluded to earlier, why doesn't CUC, why are they not into that program like that? We need to be able to plan as stipulated order requirements, plan the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years for water, wastewater. But the question is now, part of the stipulated order is a financial plan. How can we even create a financial plan? Because at the current rate we're charging, but at the same token provide the quality service in the future. So all of this is something that we want to do, but we have to be able to be able to get the bonds to be able to secure these types of plans forward, opposed from piecemealing them based on what we can afford through the cash register.
So this huge $40 million is hovering over CUC, is pretty much anchoring you down from moving forward to be bankable.
Oh, it's an issue, obviously
It's
an
an
issue.
Okay. Now I have 3 more questions, and then I think we should wrap up. How many line trucks does CUC have in total inventory, and how many are working right now?
We have approximately, if I remember correctly, we should have for Rodatin or rodents and Saipan, we should have about 16 to 18 bucket trucks now. Total equipment, I think we were more towards 25.
25, and they're all working condition?
I'm not sure exactly how many are operational, but I would imagine 4 or 5 maybe. We are trying to get them repaired. But as one of your questions earlier about the prepayment requirements, that's one of the vendors that doesn't want to do any work until he gets paid first.
All right, can you just get us the numbers of the number of trucks or whatever equipment, and how many are working, how many
Sure.
are in repair? Yeah,
Sure.
thank you. Let me focus about workforce development. Public Law 15-108, subsection 4533, specifically calls for a manpower training programs. What is CUC's board percentage mandate to reduce the number of guest workers every year?
The guest worker issue is of course a development program Also, it also has immediate needs. And what I mean by that, Chairwoman, is yes, we would love, and I've created and expanded our training program to have it a separate division. It is now not a part of human resources. Now it's a separate division. And I am advertising in American Water Association, American Public Power Association, a variety of different areas to try to get a most qualified individual to come in who can then expand on apprenticeship programs and a variety of different other things. We're speaking with Guam Power Authority on even their apprenticeship programs, and we have indeed reached out and tried to create an apprenticeship program, but we weren't successful in the groups we were working with. However, we don't give up, and that's one way, of course, is focus in on development and training. The other, of course, is the immediate need. There are some requirements, even with the stipulated order, requirements for people to come in and fully qualified and capable of doing those things. We've been advertising for a chief engineer for 3.5 years in many publications throughout the U.S. In addition to that, we have a number of power plant mechanics that really are required, that we need, that are required with multiple years of experience in diesel work. Sure, we want to continue and develop our existing workforce and our programs. However, there's still some immediate needs that we need to have. We have reduced significantly the number of contract workers from non-U.S. workers over the last 10 years. However, we've come to a point where we realize that we may need just a few more at a very small amount. We've advertised for mechanics, engineers for water there at a very high dollar amount. PEs at $100,000, but we're not getting any answers or any qualified folks throughout the U.S., Guam, and here. So we're reaching out in different ways to try to bring in people, maybe not at that amount, but bring in people that can deal with the immediate needs as we have people developed going through a development program that will take quite some time. So we're trying to deal with the current conditions, but we're also thinking and forecasting the future.
Do you guys have an internship program for our returning graduates? The reality is, if you look at the statistics of scholarship, high school kids, not too many are entering the fields of engineering, accounting, for example. And so I'm always wondering if there's some sort of an internship program that would attract our students that are in the engineering field to come back home and have that internship program with CUC or DPW or some other government entity, and then later on move into a secured full-time position. Is that something that you guys are working on, or is that something that you guys have currently in your organization or considering?
That is something that we actually did for quite some time in the past. We're at the point now that, of course, we always encourage it, but we are looking to formalize it, and has been discussed in board meetings. But we're always open for any individual interested in coming in. The doors are always wide open in that regard, but we're looking to better formalize that at not only the college intern, but also even at the high school level.
Absolutely.
So we are, yes, there's a lot that the training division, but called development and certification, is going to be involved in doing. So we're looking not only for the internal group, but we're looking to through recruitment at a young age.
Thank you. All right, so my last question, is Mobile your primary supplier, or do you also have a secondary supplier?
No, my understanding, Mobile was the only bidder this last go around. And so, yes, they are our primary at this time. Now, as far as lube oil, which is also a very large contract, that's a different contractor because that was also bid out. And
Okay.
that company can provide both, but just elected to compete only in that area.
And also, I know I requested for a copy of COC contract IFB 20-001. So I will be getting, this committee will be getting a copy of that, correct?
Very quickly, yes.
Thank you, thank you. Members, that ends my question. Do you recognize Representative Tina Sablan?
Thank you, Chair. I just had a few questions to follow up on some of the earlier discussion. But if I could just direct your attention to the screen, Director, there was a time when CUC did publish and explain how the LEAC was broken down exactly for ratepayers. And well, back when it was called the LEAC, right? So this would have been pre-2014. But ratepayers were able to see, what percentage of their LEAC rate for that month was attributed to fuel and lube, how much was reconciliation, even the bad debt element, the volatility element, that was all there in the formula. And, I would still like to see this proprietary MOPS information that the chair has requested, but, in terms of the breakdown that ratepayers, should be entitled to see for how the fuel adjustment charge is assessed, I think something like this seems like it should be very doable. And I'd like to see CUC do that again, particularly, like in recent months that we've seen significant increases, and ratepayers really don't understand how these charges are being assessed.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. And my apologies for not having this. We will definitely, and I know we discussed it the other day, and we'll definitely put this out very, very quickly. Again, one more time for the record, which is, CUC wants to get the information. CUC asked to get the information. But that answer was just as surprising to me as it is to you.
Mm-hmm.
So again, it is what was provided to us. We will provide something like this so very quickly. And thank you for bringing that up.
Yeah, thank you as well. And I did hear you say that you expect the fuel adjustment charge to be adjusted. Is this for the upcoming month? Did I hear that correctly? When can customers expect to see some reduction?
Well, the reduction is the 6 cents, as we know. I did ask that just the other day to mobile at a very high level, and even they say it's so volatile they don't know because it's based on an average. So they've got to go through most of the month to make that determination. But I did allude to the fact that if it's going down now, our hope is for it to continue to go down. And if you look historically, a lot of times, and not to say that I have any predictions, but historically you see a lot of decline. That trend continue over the many years. And there was a time, I think in 15 and 16, it just remained so low for so long that was surprising a lot of people in the industry.
Wow.
But yeah, we're just as hopeful as anybody else.
Okay. And on the subject of the solar farm, this isn't the first time that CUC is pursuing this large-scale solar array, right? And I think some years ago, at least that's the last time I recall CUC pursuing it, it was canceled, or the procurement was canceled because there were issues. What lessons were learned from the last time that won't be repeated this time around?
Well, there was a few lessons learned, but I'm going to go more in towards to the solution. And that's why we're working closely with Guam, because Guam has done this a few times already. So they will even come out and they've told me multiple times we've made mistakes, and we want to use those mistakes as value to somebody. So they're being very, very good with that, because there is an MOU between the two utilities that go back to 2012, and John Beneventi and myself added a few things, because before it was nothing but, it was for just restoration efforts, emergency efforts, but we did add some years back, development and training and technical expertise. So they've leaned on us on a few things, and we're leaning on them. And this, like I said earlier, this will include the legal counsel that they have to work with our legal counsel, and their procurement work with our procurement to ensure that of course our laws are applicable to the process, and try to see those issues early on and try to have answers to them as we put the bids out. So then we remove as much deficiencies as possible that could lead to any protest.
Mhm. And did I hear you answer the chair's question about where exactly are the proposed areas on Saipan that would be suitable?
I can't speak for you. I don't know if you heard me, but I will tell you this. I didn't answer it, and basically it's just 3 locations that were proposed because of the size
Mhm.
of the land that we need. I'd prefer to get 133 hectare spot. I'd prefer to have that so I can minimize my requirement and my investment on substation costs.
Okay.
But if not, then we would have to break them up. Hopefully 2, if better than 1, because
But
the
where?
investment.
Where on the island?
But the areas near I said between the power plant and the Waterley substation on Middle Road,
Oh,
anywhere
okay.
there because of the transmission line,
Okay.
anywhere unusable by anybody. Of course, we'd like to utilize that.
Okay. Thank you. And then in terms of where we are, I mean, you've mentioned numerous times that what we really need is a new power plant. And unfortunately, I don't think any of us saw anything in the ARPA allocations that would bring us closer to a new power plant. But where are we? Where is CUC in terms of this, long-term goal?
Well, there has been some work and also there has been some understanding early on. As soon as I came in, one of the first things I did the first week was designate a piece of property for a power plant because there's a need, and of course that's an issue. And the only place we can really put one without going through years of permitting for an extension of the pipeline is at the former DPW CUC property, because the pipeline parallels that on its way to the existing power plant. So that's been designated. So obviously the need has been determined then. Since then, it's really just been a lot of effort and understanding and trying to determine. Well, one thing is working on our credibility. Right off the bat, coming in, we needed to get from the red to the black, and we have, and we did, and we've been able to stay there for a long period of time. Again, in our efforts to establish our credibility with lending institutions. Now moving forward, trying to work with federal USDA and other areas, other places for low interest loans, potentially for a power plant. Now, again, I want to mention when we say loans, people get concerned. Right now, we're paying such a high cost of operation that technically we're really paying for a new power plant already, based on the age of this one, and the potential new efficiencies from the technologies. I mean, greater efficiencies from the technologies of a new power plant. So all of that coming into play. In addition to that, as I mentioned earlier, there's a bunch of loads that we don't carry. For example, hotels. We'd like to be able to get that and then expand on the economies of scale, right, and help the consumer, the residential and commercial consumers, and government, of course. But again, those are the things that we're trying to do, and we of course we would like to get payment on the ARs. But right now, what's important for me, understanding the circumstances of all these other agencies and the challenge they have financially, because we need to keep them operational. I just need activity. I need substantial activity at some relative good amount of activity coming from these ARs. So then we can at least inform lending institutions that there is activity and there are some programs and there is a program in which to finish and to fulfill the ARs.
Activities from ARs are
Accounts receivable. Yes,
So everybody that owes you
activities
money.
from these accounts,
Okay.
opposed from being stagnated at the rate they are now.
Mhm.
I mean, for example, let's just say hypothetically, I need $100 million for a new power plant. I've already had somebody tell me, look, you really need 60. You've got $40 million out there. So you're really taking a loan to pay for your AR. So I just need activity on that to be able to ensure that that CUC is capable of or showing the lending institution that we are capable of fulfilling this obligation that we're asking for. Not only that, but I have to go to the CPUC, I have to go to the legislature, and I know the first thing you people are going to ask me, or the legislators will ask me, is, so how do you plan on paying for it? And these are the things that I need to be able to have in front of me for you.
Thank you. And it's my understanding that the 2015 Integrated Resource Plan did take into account CUC's need for financing a new power plant. And so is that going to be part of the updated plan, the updated IRP?
Of course, I mean, it's going to take into consideration the cost of a power plant. Is that what you're saying?
CUC's need for financing. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's really straightforward, that it's going to put some sort of some sort of technology program that's best for this geographic location at this particular time. And then it's going to put a cost. And I think at the end of the day, CUC is going to have to go find funding to establish it. But it does not help us in funding. No, that's not what the IRP is for.
Has CUC approved salary increases for this year?
Yes, CUC does have a salary increase program. Yes,
Is it just automatic across the board?
it's based on evaluations and performance.
It's a 5%, 10%?
Yes, 5%. Whoever told you is exactly right.
Okay. And so what is the total cost impact, I guess, of these salary increases for CUC's
Yeah.
budget?
How much? I'm not sure. Just give me a minute.
It's approximately $800,000-$900,000.
Okay. And have salary increases already been approved then in your budget for next year?
Not for next year. It was approved for this year, the current fiscal year, but our budget for next year, there has been no
Not yet.
authorization for it.
It's the board that authorizes that?
Correct?
Okay. Thank you. So about 800 to 900,000.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. And my final question is I'm really glad to hear that the Energy Action Plan is being updated. I understand the last time there was one that was undertaken, it was like this multi-agency effort back in 2013. And I just wanted to ask, maybe we could just quickly go through the list, because there were some really good ideas that were generated from that, but some of them were specific to initiatives that CUC would have been responsible for, right? And one was to reduce theft of electricity, which was estimated back in 2013 as being about 10% of customers stealing power. What does that look like now? Has CUC made any progress towards improving that rate of theft?
Absolutely. I don't know the exact percentage right now, but at that time, CUC created what was referred to as well, it was a complete assessment of the system, and then of course review internally of our data, and we have also more strictly dealt with the situation with immediate shutdown. And what we used to find all the time, we don't find anymore. We use the meter readers to also review and assess. We've trained a variety of different people to be able to review and make the determination early. So we very limited on the number of tempered or bypassed meters that we've seen now.
So what is that rate now?
I don't know the exact rate, but I'm looking probably more around 6%. Or less, maybe 4%.
Okay. Okay, and then CUC was also supposed to size, purchase, and install new electricity transformers serving homes and businesses, to include right-sizing transformers for current loads, which was supposed to improve efficiency. Did that happen?
Yes, that did happen, but I also would like to just add just a couple of words to that. The reason why we had to do that was not because we put up the wrong size transformers. What had happened was we put up transformers, for example, an apartment complex that had 10 different units, and they were all being used. Well, during the economic, I'm in the Depression, what had happened is a lot of people had left. So we had one user on a large transformer. So then we had an increased line loss. So we've then sized those back down, and we're doing okay now. But we realize that once we go back up and the economy does grow, we're going to have an undersized issue.
Yeah.
But we'll follow the losses that way.
Okay. And then two more that maybe you could quickly update us on, and then I'm done, Madam Chair. CUC was to install new fuel pumping equipment on diesel generators. to accelerate conversion of these generators to ultra-low sulfur diesel to reduce carbon emissions and also increase engine efficiency. So that was one. And then the other one was to reduce the baseload electricity used to distribute water. And there was a proposal to actually pump water using either PV or wind energy, or at least energy efficient equipment. Where is CUC in terms of those two?
CUC is using
Objectives.
ultra low sulfur fuel,
Okay.
100%.
Okay. So you did install that new fuel pumping equipment?
Yeah, we use low ultra fuel, yes.
Okay. And then what about reducing baseload electricity for water distribution?
I think we have. We've metered everything and everything seems to be the standard. So I can say yes.
Are you using PV or wind energy or energy efficient equipment on
Yes,
CUC
yes, we
water
are using energy efficient
facilities?
equipment. PV,
Okay.
we're still working on those grants
Okay.
for our water systems. But we did put one in Rhoda. We do have a solar system in Rhoda for the water.
Oh, that's great. Okay. All right. Thank you. I yield, Madam Chair.
All right, so
Thank you.
I have two last questions. Is there any plans for CUC, or what are you guys doing to solve the areas on Saipan that have super salty water?
We do have a program, well, you know what? Hold on one second. You have an answer for that? For the. For this? Yeah, so come over.
Let's take a 5-minute break. Yeah. You can carry on with your remaining presentation.
Yes, thank you, Chair. And to answer your question regarding the water, I have Yvonne Cabrera, the acting water wastewater manager.
Thank you.
Is it on? Hi, good afternoon.
Good
As to
afternoon.
address the issue of brackish water, salty water, CUC has engaged in a sustainable water infrastructure management strategy program, which we call SWIMS. And it coincides with the bipartisan infrastructure bill law, BIL law, which is CUC's program in partnership with federal programs to reduce our pumping rate by fixing leaks. So it's a 5-year program that we are currently in the works. We just received approval from US EPA. And so we are currently working on hiring a program management office, which will help CUC and our federal partners with reducing the quality of salinity in our water.
Thank you. That's very encouraging. Thank you for that. I mean, it doesn't make sense when we have water and families are spending extra money to replenish, to replace their clothing for their kids, their appliances because of, the water conditions. So I do appreciate the update, and hopefully we can see some better results sooner rather than later. My last question to CUC is, are the CUC employees grandfathered into the civil service regulations? Or are you acting independently of the civil service regs?
Yeah, no, as an autonomous agency, we have our own classification and compensation system. So we are not part of civil service.
All right, so prior to CUC becoming a corporation, I was thinking that perhaps maybe those employees prior to the law that allowed CUC to become a corporation, that you would think that those employees were grandfathered into the civil service regulations, correct?
Yeah, it's not my understanding. I think the laws, when they created the autonomous agency, absorbed some employees that were under public works, I believe, at the time.
Okay.
But there was no conditions of holding civil service status.
All right, can you get back to us on that?
We can look further
Yeah,
into it,
maybe in a
yes.
formal writing.
Okay.
Thank you. And thank you, Rep. Tina. You have
May-
a good evening. That wraps up my question.
I-
Go ahead.
May I bring up ask a question, basically? We became aware of Public Law 1843 that was signed into law since 2014. And because all these questions are basically funneling into trying to help the consumers by reducing, the rates, the FAC. This law basically, if I understand it correctly, is earmarking funds from the GRT, the gross revenue tax of the casino, the gaming industry. And I don't know how the appropriations have been in the past, but should that materialize again, this allows for those GRTs to be earmarked to reduce the levelized energy LEAC, which was at the time, which is now FAC. There are other items, activities on the law that the funds can be used for. So during appropriations time in 2000, this is 14, so for fiscal year 15, 16, 17, I'm not sure where the funds went. I know that, or is it still there in that special account? And if it is, maybe it could be appropriated to reduce the FAC at this time. So I just thought I'd put that on the table.
Thank you for bringing that up. And we do have a House member that could carry on the conversation with the Ways and Means, and look into whether Public Law 1843 has been amended, and subsequently those particular revenues have been identified to fund other activities of the government. But thank you for bringing that up.
Thank you. You're welcome to.
That ends my question for today, and we'll take a 3-minute break before I conclude the meeting, just so that we could say thank you to CUC. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
from recess on agenda number 7. Members, I don't have any announcements, and may I hear a motion to adjourn? And I second that motion. This meeting is officially adjourned. Thank you very much, everybody.